The motorsports world is where legends are made, the unthinkable happens, and barriers are broken. One man harnesses the power of an industry every week. This is the General Tire Down and Dirty Show, powered by Polaris Razor, with Jim Beaver.
Well, how about that dramatic intro, man? Switching it up for 2020. Welcome to the General Tire Down and Dirty Show, powered by Polaris Razor. I am Jim Beaver, your host, as that very, very dramatic intro said. We'll keep that one around for a while. Maybe we'll switch it up here in a month or two. But, yeah, welcome to the show. Thanks to everybody tuning in on Sirius XM 211 Dan Patrick Radio. Thanks to everybody tuning in on the Sports Byline Network, on networks across the country, AFN, our good friends in the American Forces Network overseas, as well as all of our on-demand listeners at downanddirtyshow.com, Apple podcasts, I don't know, what, CastBox, Stitcher, Pandora, I don't know, we're like all over the place at this point, Spotify, I don't know, I'm missing a bunch of them, but thank you guys for tuning in, much appreciated, and, we've got an interesting show today, obviously a big one, Daytona 500 just happened. It just went off. It was earlier this week, got delayed from Sunday, ran on Monday. Yes, we are an action motorsports show, but massive storylines coming out of Daytona. Ryan Newman, who we now know is okay, walked out of the hospital under his own power a couple of days after one of the most horrific crashes probably in NASCAR history. And we are definitely going to dive into talking about that, probably the safety aspects of NASCAR. I got my good friend and media director, Chris Leone. He is going to be calling into the show. He also doubles down. He's involved with iRacing and eNASCAR. He's a massive NASCAR fan, automotive journalist. Obviously, he works for me full-time as well, handling my staff writing and things like that. But this guy knows NASCAR. He knows the safety aspect. He's worked with, he worked at the series with Red Bull Global Rallycross for quite a few years, knows a lot of the NASCAR teams. Going to be fun to have Chris on. We're going to kind of dissect what happened in Daytona. Honestly, normally in a week we wouldn't be talking a lot about the Daytona 500, but I think everything that happened at the event means we need to talk about it because I feel like there's overarching themes for all of motorsports that happened at Daytona. So we're going to get into that. Also going to get into, obviously, power rankings. We've got Tiffany Stone calling in. We're going to talk some off-road with her. We got Laughlin this weekend. We got, Mint 400 coming up. So we got a lot to talk about here. Also some big news on Athlete of the Decade I want to dive into as well. So a lot coming at you in these 2 hours right here on the General Tire Down and Dirty Radio Show. That's right, powered by Polaris Razor. Whether you're looking for a tire that balances high performance responsiveness and traction in wet and light snow conditions, excellent handling and traction in wet and dry conditions, or a summer performance tire designed with the driving enthusiast in mind, General Tire has you covered. From the all-new G-Max RS to the Grabber ATX, no matter what you drive, General Tire will get you where you're going. Learn more at GeneralTire.com. General Tire, cruising with the Down and Dirty Radio Show since 2012. You want extreme performance, reliability, and the most fun you can have on four wheels? The Polaris Razor brings it to you. But you don't need to take my word for it. You can take theirs.
I'm Tanner Faust, and I choose the Polaris Razor because it's the most fun you can have with a steering wheel.
What's up? I'm Ronnie Renner, and I choose Polaris Razor because it's the sickest, most reliable side-by-side on the planet.
What's up, everybody? Heavy D from Diesel Brothers. Listen, I'm on Team Razor because it's hands down the best piece of machinery on the planet.
I'm RJ Anderson, and I choose Polaris Razor because it's the most fun, most capable machine.
Action sports stars, TV personalities, and some of the best race car drivers in the world all choose Polaris Razor because it's the ultimate combination of power, suspension, agility, and fun. Find out more information on the web at PolarisRazor.com or follow at Polaris Razor on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and use the hashtag RazorLife to share your story.
Conditions off the pavement are always changing, so why settle for a light bar that just turns on and off? The Rigid Adapt is a revolutionary new light bar that will automatically select from 8 beam patterns that range from a widespread 90-degree flood to a 15-degree spot based on your vehicle's speed. Try that with your knockoff light bar. A dash-mounted controller allows the user to toggle between adaptive mode. beam patterns, and RGBW accent lighting. With Adapt, it's easier than ever to own the night.
Looking to have some fun on four wheels? Dirtfish Rally School has you covered. Packing as much adrenaline and adventure as you can handle into high-performance all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive Subaru rally cars is where the fun begins at Dirtfish. Just 30 minutes outside of Seattle and Snoqualmie, you'll get a chance to train up to 3 full days with some of the country's best instructors and be put through the high-octane rush of rally on mud, dirt, and tarmac. Get started today and call 425-888-7715 or visit us online at dirtfish.com and use code 911 for a 15% discount.
Life is all about sound. The sound of sports, the sound of the racetrack, and the sound of your vehicle. Don't drive around listening to this. Drive around listening to the sound of performance. Gibson Performance. Gibson Performance Exhaust is the company who can turn this into this. Remember that life is all about sound, and Gibson Exhaust is the sound of performance. Check out your next catback exhaust system, headers, muffler, or UTV exhaust at GibsonPerformance.com and get more power and more sound.
Like what you hear? Catch all the back episodes of the Down and Dirty Radio Show on Apple Podcast, and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
Welcome back to the General Tire Down and Dirty Show, powered by Polaris RZR. And welcome to everybody tuning in on Sirius XM 211, Dan Patrick Radio, Sports Byline, and everybody on demand on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, our website. Doing things a little bit different this week because, obviously Daytona 500 happened, but there was a story that was bigger than the actual race. And because of that, I decided I was going to we're going to move our power rankings to this opening segment this week, and probably our opening 2 segments. So I enlisted my media director, Chris Leone, who does power rankings with me. Those of you tuning in on Sirius, you're going to be hearing him for the first time. But Chris, I know we're going to get to power rankings, and our top 5. We'll explain those in a little bit for those listeners that are first-time listeners to the show. But I think, I got to say, you are a bigger NASCAR fan than I am. You have been since I've known you, and I'm a NASCAR fan, but definitely not on the level you are. But Daytona 500, we all know how big that is. But I think the bigger story here is you and I were texting throughout this race that was delayed until Monday. So nobody even got to watch the race until Monday, because of weather and things like that. But you and I were texting, and NASCAR, it's getting a little rough. Let's put it that way. That's going to be the nice way to say it. I know both of us have kind of relationships with NASCAR through eNASCAR, so we're going to be politically correct here. But some of the drivers were taking some, I would say, some opportunities very liberally. And, and then at the end of the race, it actually had nothing to do with any of the rough driving, but the accident with Ryan Newman, I know you and I were texting, and it scared us both to death, literally. And that was, one of his Ford teammates there pushing him, trying to get him to the victory. And, the crash was just, you and I were thinking the worst, and thank goodness it came out a whole lot better than what we thought. But, let's talk Daytona 500, Chris, because it was a wild weekend. Starting with the rain delay, racing on Monday, rough driving, the Newman crash. At one point, I think half the field got involved in a tangle-up, and it was – I don't know, Chris. It was a nutty 500.
Jim, if I had to sum up the whole Daytona 500 weekend and the experience this year in one word, I think it would have to be exhausting. Just from everything you said. Not that it was necessarily a bad race or anything.
No, it was a good race.
Yeah, obviously there are some things that are just a little larger than who crosses the line first. And obviously, the number one thing that's been on everybody's mind this entire week has been the health of Ryan Newman. And to see him actually walk out of the hospital under his own power, holding the hands of his 2 daughters, was nothing short of a miracle. We've seen lots of things happen in the world of motorsport. There are few crashes in this day and age that really shake us to our core from a safety standpoint, which is, to the credit of people, unfortunately, being reactive at first. I know in NASCAR, obviously, the big catalyst was the death of Dale Earnhardt, but, just everybody was very guarded on Monday night. When we didn't have an update, before the broadcast ended on Ryan Newman's status, there was so much reason to worry. But seeing under 48 hours later, not only seeing him standing up and smiling, but also leaving the hospital, I mean, that is nothing short of a miracle. And really, really the health of everybody who competes in motorsport, and I don't care what form of racing you're in, whether you're a NASCAR driver, whether you're out competing in the desert this weekend in Laughlin, whether you're drag racing in Arizona this weekend, it doesn't matter where you are, you know, health and safety, being able to go home to your family is paramount. And I think it was Denny Hamlin's spotter who actually said this, you know, the day after, because obviously Denny won that race, and, you know, the drivers have no idea when an accident like that happens across the finish line, that something bad happened. You know, so Denny goes out and celebrates because anybody who won the Daytona 500 is going to celebrate, especially if they've got no idea that the incident behind them was as bad as it was. But, you know, he said, Denny Spotter said, you know, if Denny gets to go home to his family, even if he finishes last, then I did my job, you know, and that really is the most important thing. And I mean, now that we've covered that, yes, very, very aggressive racing. I mean, you know, the cars, they really just seem to drive different this year. And I know that part of it is because we're out of the restrictor plate era. You know, we're seeing speeds actually that are a little bit higher. We were definitely seeing guys top out at, you know, in the low 200s, which is something that, you know, if you've been paying attention to NASCAR over the past 30 years, you really haven't seen that since, you know, especially on the super speedway, since about the late 1980s, you know, before I was even born, to be honest.
Isn't the record, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but Awesome Bill from Dawsonville, Bill Elliott, doesn't he hold the record on a super speedway at like 230 something miles an hour or 220s? I don't know what it is, but isn't it some like absurd, almost like an IndyCar type speed that Bill Elliott holds a record for?
Yeah, Bill holds the NASCAR qualifying record at about 212, and there are other times when people have driven without a restrictor plate where they have gotten a little closer to IndyCar speeds. But you know, regardless, it was a big change, and you know, as part of it, one of the other things that you were seeing is you were seeing a lot of tandem driving. You know, guys getting behind one car behind the other and having the two-car tandem kind of work again. Yeah. And you know, that's something that I think has always kind of produced great and interesting racing, but obviously it's something where the slightest error or mistake or, you know, push at the wrong time could cause some, you know, serious problems. I mean, we saw that with the biggest wreck. We saw that with Joey Logano trying to push Eric Almirola and instead sending him into Brad Keselowski and causing probably the biggest wreck of the 500. And I know Joey was caught some heat for, you know, doing something similar in the Busch Clash as well the previous week. So, you know, it's something where, I don't know. I mean, you're talking about certainly the biggest stock car race of the year. And, you know, probably one of, if you're a casual motorsports fan or not a motorsports fan, one of the only races over the course of the year that you will know of when it's happening or maybe pay attention to. So, I mean, you can understand obviously why guys are making the aggressive types of moves that they are. But yeah, I think after all of the safety initiatives that we've seen over the last 20 years, you know, the air has kind of been, you know, there's been a bit of that air of invincibility. And I mean, I have heard people say, and frankly, I think this is one of the most uneducated comments you can make about racing, but I've heard people complain about racing being too safe. You know, you will never get rid of that element of danger entirely. And we certainly saw that on Monday night. That hopefully that scared enough people straight to the point that we will see a little bit less risk-taking the next time we go to a super speedway. Hopefully there will be a couple of other changes. I know that the Ryan 6-car, and I believe the 32 of Corey LaJoie, which was the one that hit Newman's greenhouse as that car was flipping. I think both of them got taken back to NASCAR R&D. So hopefully, you know, there's going to be a lot that people will be able to learn from this incident. Hopefully we'll be able to keep cars in the ground, which is something that I know Ryan has been an advocate of for well over a decade. And hopefully, you know, we'll just continue to refine these race cars, make them safer, and, that's a lesson that I think any form of motorsport needs to, always put first. It's something we've seen with IndyCar recently, where the aero screen has been implemented, and it's